we're going to talk about is debt recycling. That's the money management structure and system. And the second thing, which you may or may not have heard of before, the property part of our strategy, we like to focus on dual occupancy subdivision. So that's a key thing that many people don't get, is the last part being subdivision. So by the end of the workshop, I'm hoping that what you'll get out of it is a good understanding of how the banks work. You'll know how to take back control. And importantly, you'll have a good overview of what I believe is the best property strategy that's out there today. It's quite safe and very simple and effective strategy that uses the fundamentals. So spoiler alert, dual occupancy subdivision, not buying 10 cheap properties, in the middle of nowhere, and not buying $5 million houses in the eastern suburbs. So dual occupancy subdivision. Let's rip in a bit. So before we dive into the strategy itself, important thing to know about our loan, and you might know some of this information already, but it's important to get the basics right. Your home loan, if you have a $1 million home loan, over a normal payment term of 30 years, you'll make $2.156 million in payments if you just pay the normal way. If your home loan was half that, at 500 grand, you'd be paying about $1,060,000 or thereabouts in total payments. So your actual rate is not 6 odd percent. It's effectively 115% if you just pay the normal way. And then some people do things like have an offset account or whatnot to try and counteract some of their interest, and so they may get some lower benefit. On average, people are paying about 100% interest. So what we want to do is take people away from thinking about just an interest rate in isolation and starting to think about your total interest costs. So the question that you might want to be asking yourself is, how could I pay this loan off in half the time or a third of the time, so I only have to pay half or a third of the interest? That's a much better question to be asking yourself.
Soaring inflation, interest rates and cost of living pressures has triggered a looming retirement crisis for many Australians, with forecasts predicting 1 in 3 worry they'll need to dip into their hard-earned superannuation to clear their mortgage debt. Seeing is the dream of retiring with a healthy super balance and going travelling fading for many people.
Hi, Les. Yeah, the statistics are alarming. 33% of Australian couples are cannibalising their super to clear their mortgage debt prior to retirement. So with increasing inflation, cost of living crisis, high interest rates, it's never been a more pressing time to get focused on tightening those budgets, adopting a conscious spending habit, and also accelerating your mortgage repayment. Look, the average Australian we're finding is refinancing every 2 to 3 years. And all that's doing, Alice, is resetting their clock back to the start of a 30-year term. So you need to get away from what the banks are trying to get us to do, which is continue to refinance your home loan every 2 to 3 years.
So that point is going to become evidently important in a couple of slides' time. So what you're seeing there is more and more people are retiring with a mortgage. And importantly, one of the reasons that we're retiring with a mortgage is that the banks continually ask us to refinance and refinance. They promote a better rate and continue to get us to do that on average every couple of years. So just keep that in mind as we continue through. So around that retirement phase, right, and I'm sure not all of us are near retirement, some may be, but it's important to know what we do today, how that'll impact us in the future. And as it happens, 36% of Australians still have a mortgage in retirement. That was a lot higher than I had thought when I started to do the research. And if we look at those 36% of people that have a mortgage, what do they look like? So they're not people that were close to the poverty line along their journey. They're a blend of people. And one of the challenges here is that a lot of these people earned good money along the way, but they had a larger mortgage and continued to refinance. And so there's a fair chunk of those people that ended up having a mortgage that they thought they wouldn't have had at retirement. Now, 75% of those people that still have a mortgage in retirement have a larger mortgage than they do a superannuation balance. So they can't fix the problem by just getting their super payout and paying off the mortgage and then looking for a pension. Right? So they just don't have enough money there to do that. For myself. But quick question for you, and if you're not opposed to it, pop something in the chat. What would you want more? So if your mortgage was gone, what would you be after? Is it freedom? Is it time to yourself? Or is it security knowing that you're covered? So for me, it was all about time. Thanks, Stan. Time. Now, what's really interesting about this is that I haven't put money up there, right? All money does is give us back one of these things, right? Don't be shy, everyone. The chat is a good thing. So Vinod, you got your hand raised. Go for it, Vinod. Let me see if I can unmute you. Oh, that's okay. That's okay, Vinod. So Grant, freedom, I love it. I think for most of us, these are the three things that matter, right? And what I do know from running some of these workshops in the past is that it's not very often that someone says, oh, I really want loads of money. It's not very often that someone says, oh, I want a Ferrari or whatever it might be, right? And, Jeff's absolutely right. Time, but you can't have any of these without money, right? Oh, Ellen, I'm so glad to see you on the call. Guys, Ellen is really cool. We worked with Ellen and her family earlier at the end of last year, and helped them get money for their first home. They're a really, really great family. And so freedom, really interesting. I know Ellen has 3 kids, right? So I'm sure that freedom to be able to spend more time with them and hang out with them would be really important to her and her family. So this webinar, we're going to power through some stuff shortly, but what I'd love to be able to point out to you is who this webinar is for and who it's not for, right? So you can choose to stay on or not, right? So this is for you. If you're in your 30s, 40s, or 50s, and you have your own home and a mortgage, but you have a couple of $100,000 of equity, so you're not stuck, right? If you don't want to be a burden on your family later in life, if you want to retire without a mortgage, if you think that property is exciting, but sometimes people can make it really confusing, if you've got a good household income, and if you're open to ideas and taking action, then this webinar is definitely for you. Now, please, again, take this the right way. If you're looking for a get-rich-quick scheme, if you want to own 20, 30, 40 properties, I'm probably not your guy. If you're not open to advice, right, or if you're confident that you already know that you've got the right strategy and that you don't need any help, then you don't need this, right? If you don't have a good paying job or a business, that's the problem you've got to solve first, and then we can help you when you get that solved thereafter. So this is not for you if these things, any of these 6 or 7 things on this list, kind of how you feel or think, right? Quick hint, owning 10, 20 properties, right, is probably too risky for a normal family, even if somebody on social media tells you otherwise, right? So these are the things we're going to cover off very quickly. The home loan trap, how the banks control us, how we can beat the banks, and clear steps to take to win, right?
How is it that the top 4 banks in Australia are in the top 8 most profitable banks in the world? I mean, how do you get 26 or 27 million people to create 4 banks that are in the top 8 in the whole planet? That just doesn't sit well with me in terms of just simple logic.
Monopoly, yeah.
Well, it's beyond that. It's the fact that we're allowed to vary the rates here in Australia. Most countries are fixed. So they can crank it up when they want. They can crank it down when they want more customers.
That's an amazing point. Like people talk about the US, but in Australia, our debt to wages is like 200%.
Yeah.
In the US, it's 97%. And the reason that our property debt to wages is up 200% is because of the variable rate. Whereas in the US, they've got the fixed rate and they're able to lock in rates when they're lower over for 30 years.
Yeah.
But as you've seen, for everyone in Australia who's had a mortgage in the last two years, so their monthly repayments have doubled in price.
So a couple of key points there that these guys are talking about. I think that's on the Money Mates podcast. But there's a couple of things that you may or may not know. So in other parts of the world, the US in that example, other parts of Europe also, when you locked in a rate, if you locked in a rate if you bought a home when rates were 3.5%, that rate stays with you for the 30-year loan. You might have also heard stories of people in the GFC, for instance, if you're like me, you're old enough to remember that people were handing back the keys in places like Spain and in Ireland and so on and so forth in the US, because there's 2 things that are different between our loans and their loans. Overseas, US and Europe, they have non-recourse loans, where you can basically say, I can't afford to pay, and hand the bank back the problem. You also have a fixed rate for the term of your loan. We've got a variable rate. And there's some reasons that the banks do that here in Australia. And they're not all good ones, by the way. So the banks push the risk back onto us in Australia. If we, I just saw Jeff's chat there, greed, absolutely. They push all the risk back onto us, right? So what they're saying to us is, hey, we'll lend you this money. If you can prove you can afford to pay it back, right? And if you're willing to take all of the risk, then we'll lend you the money. So if you have to sell your house to pay back the bank, right? If there's a shortfall, they're coming after you. Overseas, that's not the case, right? Then the other thing that they do is they say, hey, if the cost of money changes, you've got to pay more, i.e. the variable rate. Then what they do is they spend a shitload of money marketing to us, right? And convincing us to refinance for a better rate. Right? If they constantly get us to refinance, what happens? The loan term keeps starting again and again and again. We're on this mortgage merry-go-round. The only time you should refinance is to get yourself set up correctly and to continue to invest. If you want to borrow money to invest, you've got to refinance. But if you're just going to borrow money again and again and again because you want to get a better rate, then all you're doing is resetting and paying again and again. I proved to a customer today, a really great guy, was referred to me, that his better rate, the 0.3% he was going to save, was going to save him $2,000 a year. But actually, it was going to cost him $60,000 in extra repayments. And so we created a different plan together. So they just keep marketing to us, right? They got huge marketing budgets, right? So then the other thing they market to us is offset accounts. Now, before anyone bashes me in the chat, offset accounts work, but to a point. and if they're connected, right? So if you had an extra 25 grand sitting in your offset account, it'll save you about 1.5 years on your loan term. And it'll save you about 100 odd grand in interest. But that's not going to pay your loan off, right? $1 million costs you $1.1 million in interest, right? You're only saving 100 grand. Better than nothing, I suppose. But it's a gimmick, really. So this might blow your mind. 3 of the big 4 banks have had multiple fines for not having offset accounts linked, and over many years. Some of these articles are from 2017, some from 2022, and then one last year, right? 680,000 customers of ANZ did not have their offset accounts linked under the break free package, right? They got fined 25 million bucks. It's estimated that they saved about $1 billion, right, by not having these accounts linked because they got to charge us that interest, right? NAB had 5,000 customers overcharged on a mortgage where they just had wrong rates attached. So that offset account might help you, but is it actually linked? So look, I'm a bit of a pain in the ass. So I contacted the banks. I had some investment loans at the time with Commonwealth Bank. So these are letters sent to me, 3 by the Commonwealth Bank and 1 by ANZ. These were all sent to me in 2024. Some of these were for loans from years ago. If you look close, I've got rid of the amounts and the bank account numbers, but you can see the dates. I had refunds from Commonwealth Bank because I asked them to audit my loans and to prove to me whether the accounts were linked. I didn't know if they were or not, but it turns out that they weren't linked on 3 of the loans. And so I got about 2 grand back last year by calling the banks and hassling the crap out of them. And then ANZ had overcharged me on a credit card. So I joined a class action. I got another 625 bucks back from ANZ. That $625 was actually, I got that back in March. So over the last year, I got about 2.5 grand back by just challenging the banks. On social media, some people asked me how you did this, and actually, I didn't calculate it myself. I just accused them and asked them to prove it, and they gave me money back. So we're going to get into the strategy now, right? Why this strategy? Well, this particular strategy that somebody taught me and that I've used is the only strategy I know of that will pay your mortgage off and have you building wealth at an accelerated rate. So at the same time, you can do both. People think you either have to just pay your mortgage off or just invest. This strategy can help you do both over a 10-year period. So what do we need to do to beat the banks? We've got to reduce interest. We've got to turn our home loan debt into an investment debt, and we have to invest in high quality assets. So point 1, reduce interest. The only way that you can start to reduce your interest is to take control of your money. That's the first thing. So you need to have a budgeting tool and a wealth tool and get clarity on exactly how much money you have, what investments you have, whether that be superannuation, your bank accounts, your home loan, your cars. You need to see all of it in one place and be able to clearly go, where do I stand? We use a software tool called My Prosperity. I know our company is called Prosperity, but actually the software tool is a financial planning tool from a different company. My Prosperity provide this software that allow you to see your net wealth in one app, right? This uses open banking, which is a government grade banking, and allows us to see our investment properties, our debts, all our bank accounts and everything in one location and show you your net worth so you can get control. Then what we want to do is focus on reducing interest. So we want to make sure we have the right loan type and that all of our income firstly goes into our loan. So this is different. Just think about that bit for 1 second. Most people have all of their income go into a bank account or an offset account, their bank account, and then they pay their loans. Right? What we want to do is pay our loan first and then pay some of our expenses out. So all of our income firstly sits in our loan. We don't want to make the minimum monthly payment. Our loans have unlimited redraw, right? We've got to make sure we have the right type of redraw, but unlimited redraw means we can always access our money anytime we want. So firstly, we've got to reduce our interest by smashing the loan down. So we need to prove that we have a surplus in our household. A 2-person household has about 11 grand a month income, and this will change for each family. These are just some averages. And so if you have 3 grand of living expenses, food going out, cost of getting on the bus, those sorts of things, then if we deduct away 3.5 grand worth of bills, right? We're not talking about our mortgage yet. We're just thinking about things like, petrol, insurance, etc. Most families have a surplus. If you just spend your money willy-nilly, you might not use this surplus well. And so what we first need to do is make sure, prove to ourselves we have a surplus. Once we set up our loan structure and we set up our plan to start to reduce our debt, we can start reducing things a lot quicker. And as we pay down our debt, we want to convert our debt to investment debt. And here's how that can work. Now, this is in its simplest form, just for illustration. So if we can pay down over a few years, say 100 grand in debt over a couple of years, you're going to think I'm crazy, but 2 or 3 years, that's very achievable. If we learn how to repay our debt quicker, we can restructure our finance with the bank, not refinance all the time, restructure, and we can convert that 100 grand into an investment split. We can then take that $100,000 that we paid down and use it as the deposit for our investment. We then get rental income and tax deductions from our investments. And we then funnel those exactly like we do with our salary, always into our home loan first. And we start accelerating the reduction further of our home loan. So we continually try and reduce our home loan and convert it to more and more investment debt. That means our loan is slowly becoming tax deductible and our investments are accruing, and we recycle that 2 or 3 times. That is the basics of debt recycling. Now, the key to this is learning how to reduce your debt, buying good quality investments, and learning the tactics of